How do you know if you actually have social anxiety disorder, and what do you do about it? Mended Light. Welcome to Ask a Therapist, where you all sound off in the comments and let me know questions you'd like for me to answer in these videos, and I just give it my darndest. Today we're going to talk about social anxiety disorder, how to know if you have it. First of all, every disorder in the DSM-5, which is the manual for mental and emotional disorders, behavioral disorders, every single disorder listed in there is something that is a normal human experience, thinking, or behavior blown out to extremes. I guess not all of them. Psychosis isn't common unless you actually have psychosis. But for example, everybody feels sad and everybody feels depressed. But taken to such an extreme that you can't function on the level you want to function, that's clinical depression. Everybody has stress, everybody gets anxious, but if it goes to the degree that you're having trouble functioning, then that's an anxiety disorder. Right? So how do I know if I have social anxiety? The reason this question is relevant from a clinical perspective is how do I know whether I actually have the disorder versus I just don't like social situations and they make me nervous. Here's the thing. Either way, it's something to identify in yourself and work on if you want to work on it. With social anxiety disorder, it's just much bigger. But it comes down to three things: emotional and behavioral symptoms, physical symptoms, and avoiding common social situations. So let's talk about some of the emotional and behavioral symptoms. You may have a fear of situations in which you may be judged negatively, right? Again, that's a pretty common fear just among people. Where it becomes a disorder is, I just don't go. I don't go to those social situations, or I don't leave the house, right? Versus, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna work through it. Like, that's the biggest difference. Worry about embarrassing or humiliating yourself. Also common. You know how I work through that? Quick tangent. I used to be terrified of embarrassing myself because I did it a lot growing up, and I got teased a lot and bullied a lot. And I tried to be the class clown, except for people didn't think I was funny. And so they just like made fun of me and tore me down. And how I finally got over that. It's a longer video. I should do a video on that sometime, but a component of that is I realized that if I embarrassed myself, my friends were still my friends. My family was still my family, and I was still me. I did a comedy club in college, and I had this weird thing where I could perform really well in a room full of strangers. But the moment there was someone in the crowd that I knew, family was visiting, or a friend or a pretty girl that I wanted to impress, I would choke, and I would get super nervous, and I would struggle with it. And I did choke on several occasions, and I thought, oh man, I've just embarrassed myself in front of hundreds of people. The thing is, next week, if anyone saw me on campus, they might remember that I was the guy who choked in that comedy show. But more than likely, they're going to remember that they went to a comedy show. Some of the comedians were funnier than others. And they would see me and they go, where do I know that guy from? I can't remember. And 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, it'd just be gone. Like, it'd just be like a vague memory. And I hadn't destroyed my reputation, hadn't destroyed anything by humiliating myself, because the people who love me still love me, no matter what. And that was powerful for me because I'm no longer scared of humiliation. In fact, I've learned that if you take a moment that's humiliating and you turn it into a moment of self-deprecating humor, and you're humble about it and you own like that was embarrassing, say you're trying to tell a joke on stage and your voice cracks, it's only awkward if it's awkward for everybody else, right? If you run with it, then it becomes, anyways, that's a tangent. I just felt inspired about the whole being afraid to be embarrassed in public. I apologize. Other symptoms. Fear that others will notice that you look anxious, fear of physical symptoms that point out that you're struggling, like you're sweating or you're shaking or your voice breaks. And the weird thing about that is the more you're afraid that those things will happen, the more likely they will happen. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And this is where it becomes a disorder, especially avoidance of doing things or speaking to other people out of fear of embarrassment. There are things that you can or should do for your goals, for your academic life, for your career, for your social life, but you're afraid of embarrassment, so you just don't do them. There's intense fear or anxiety during social situations, intense anxiety leading up to a feared event. There's expectations of the worst possible consequences in a social situation, and a over-analysis of your own performance in a social situation, assuming that everybody is fixated and thinking about what you did or how you acted, when the truth is, most people are thinking about themselves and did they come across good. We're going to talk about physical symptoms and avoidance of social situations in a moment. But social anxiety disorder can start in childhood and it can start in adulthood, but usually it starts in adolescence. And why is that? Because adolescence is when we are most tuned in to social judgment, right? We're trying to figure out who we are, what groups we identify with, who our friends are, where we belong. We're almost at adulthood. Not quite there, but we're figuring it out and figuring out who we are and who we want to be. And so we tend to be very tribal and we tend to be very cliquish. And in order to bond with these people, I have to shun these people. And when people get shunned, they feel judged. And it is true. I mean, I can understand why it develops in high school, because in high school, people tend to be at their judgiest. Not everybody. There's great kids, but people tend to be at their judgiest. I saw myself and still see myself that I feel like I was a really well-balanced, good-hearted, kind teenager. And even I look at those years as, okay, I've never been a terribly judgmental person, but as bad as I got was in high school. You know, it's just sad. So I can understand where this comes from. As adults, more and more people are just like, yeah, you do you. And if they're not, if they're judgmental as adults, we're more prone to say, well, that person's just not a fit for me. But if we develop social anxiety disorder in adolescence, we may never have the confidence, unless we work through it, to dismiss the opinions of others that tear us down. Social anxiety disorder physical symptoms: blushing, fast heartbeat, trembling, sweating, upset stomach or nausea trying to catch your breath, dizziness or lightheadedness, feeling that your mind has gone blank, or actually having a full-blown panic attack where it feels like your world is closing in on you and that you're going to die. So these intense physical experiences and the fear that people will see them and judge us for them and laugh at us or scorn us leads us to avoid social situations. We don't like interacting with unfamiliar people or strangers. We avoid going to parties. We have a hard time going to work or school, starting conversations, making eye contact, dating, entering a room in which people are already seated, returning items to a store, right? Eating in front of others and using a public restroom. Now, those specific lists that I just gave are from the DSM-5, but they're also found on mayoclinic.org. But the point is, if what I just described sounds like you may have social anxiety disorder and you should get some help. You should see a counselor to help you work through this, because there are things that you are not experiencing in life that you could be experiencing. And you may think, that's fine, I don't want to experience them, but consider this. What are you not achieving in life or accomplishing? How are you not growing? What are you not experiencing? Because this is holding you back. And isn't it worth getting help and support to work through this? I would say that it absolutely is. So that's how to know if you have social anxiety disorder. We've got another video on a different, how do you know if you have dissociative identity disorder, that you can watch right here. If you need support for your mental health and your emotional well-being, we've got different levels of support for you over at mendedlight.com. From our membership site, where we have live Q&As with Alicia and I, a Book of the Month Club where we do audios talking about the book that everyone's reading or listening to, as well as a live discussion with you and us, and an ongoing, ever-growing catalog of mental health, trauma recovery, and relationship-based courses, video courses that I've created for you. If you need more than that, we have a team of specialists who are ready and willing to help you and to counsel with you. So go to mendedlight.com and learn more about what we can offer. Do you struggle with social anxiety? What's that been like for you? How do you cope? What's helped and what hasn't? Let us know in the comments below, because we'd love to hear from you. What would you like me to talk about? What question do you have for me that I can answer in one of these Ask a Therapist segments? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, folks, keep shining, because we need your light.